My name is John Brown. It's JOHN, for those that are inquiring about how I'm spelling my name these days.
Oh, okay. I think there's a mic there. Are you using the mic?
No, we're not going to need a mic. We're going to keep this quaint and intimate and a little bit of background on myself and who I am, what I'm doing here. I'm an artist and the owner of the Spirit of Newburyport for the past 10 years, and I'm an operator of the in-street kiosk for the past 7 years, and I am now the coordinator of the Yankee Homecoming in-street Artisans Revival for about 6 months now. And tonight I'm going to be your host for this very first public presentation of the Yankee Homecoming in-street Artisans Revival. And 60 years ago, an artist by the name of Jack Frost, and I'm just curious, by a quick show of hands, is there anybody that know who Jack Frost was? That's good. That's good. Because 60 years ago, an artist came forward and created what we know as Yankee Homecoming, and his name was Jack Frost. And I believe that tonight we are going to be a part of history, even though that this is a small and quaint crowd. I believe that 60 years from now, there are going to be people that are standing in this room, and they're going to be talking about what we're talking about here tonight. I firmly believe that. And probably 60 years ago, they're probably not going to remember their names who was here either. But tonight, I believe that what we're doing here and what we're talking about is going to answer a clarion call for private individuals and free thinkers, craftsmen, musicians, artists, humanitarians, and the like, empowered by imagination to create infinite possibilities and alternate realities. And before I get into introducing the speakers for tonight's presentation, I'd like you to bear with me a little bit as I talk a little bit about the history about what got me here tonight and to kick off this presentation. Throughout this creative process and standing up and bringing forth the vision of the revival, I have gained a better understanding of history and just why I feel that history repeats itself. And I feel that history repeats itself to give humanity an everlasting chance to get it right. So there are many aspects of this revival, the concept of this revival, and it continues to be very difficult to find a starting point on how to begin describing what this revival is. I believe that there are many different directions that it can easily go and get lost on, so I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible, and then we can get into a few speakers to describe what it perhaps means to them. 10 years ago, I stood in this room and presented an exhibit entitled Newburyport, An American Perspective. And it's quite interesting that one of the people that spoke with me in that presentation is also here tonight, Mr. Alex Adrian. And it's to me, that exhibit that we brought forth, and that picture that you see right here had a lot to do with that exhibit. And it was this photograph was shot by a man named Ted Kyrios, who's no longer with us. but I feel that his spirit is still here, is part of the revival. And Ted was a history teacher here in Newburyport, and he taught history, and he did a slide presentation during that exhibit. And he was also one of the first people that inspired me to pursue this remarkable history in the city. And he took this photograph on July 4th, 1976. And it was, as you can see, the buildings in North Row, across Market Square, hadn't been completed yet because Inch Street was the first phase of the restoration that was introduced in July of 1976. July 4th, 1976 is part of the 200th bicentennial anniversary of our country. And Governor Dukakis was running for president at the time, and he actually did a ceremony on Market Square. There's a little, I don't know if anyone's ever noticed, but there's a plaque in the middle of Market Square, and there's an inscription on that plaque that makes reference to the burning of the teas. And there's a historical significance behind that. And Governor Dukakis actually burnt tea during the ceremony to initiate and celebrate this initial restoration phase of Market Square and Inch Street. And so during this presentation that I'm speaking of 10 years ago, it was basically a kickoff for me as far as my career here as an artist on Inch Street. And while, Ben, do you have that link, the audio link?
Yes, I do.
If you can just cue that up. What I'm going to do here for just a couple of minutes is I want to play this audio link by one of the speakers that was here, that was present alongside Alex and myself. Her name is Amy Batchelor. And one of the topics that she talked about was what we're talking about here is transformation. And I believe that it begins on a personal level. We're talking about a transformation of a town. We're talking about the revival and what that means, and incorporating a new event into Yankee Homecoming that's 60 years old. And I believe it begins on a personal level. And I'm going to play just a few minutes of an audio that was presented by Amy Batchelor, who was a businesswoman here in Newburyport 10 years ago. And she talks about personal transformation, and she talks about tapping into this field of infinite possibilities. And I believe that's what we're doing with the revival. We're tapping into something that is about creation and creativity, and it starts on a personal level. And I'm only going to play a couple of minutes of this, and we're going to play it right up to a point where we hear a gentleman's voice. And the gentleman's voice that you're going to hear is that of Ted Kyrios, the man who inspired me, who passed away a couple of years ago. And we'll cut it off at that point. But the reason I want to play this is that she talks about tapping into this field of infinite possibilities. And I believe that that's what we're doing here as we're kicking off this first public presentation of the Artisans Revival.
My first speaker that I'd like to introduce is Amy Batchelor, who is the owner of Heaven. And she was also, like I pointed out earlier, she's in the Toll building, which you saw in part of the slide presentation. And Amy Batchelor is a Master of Education. She's an intuitive counselor, and she's going to be speaking on personal transformation and health. So without further ado, please welcome Amy Batchelor.
Thank you, John, for organizing this and for inviting me to be here. It's a total honor, and thank all of you for joining us on this wintry winter day in Newburyport. We weren't sure if it was spring or winter or what was going on, but today is definitely winter. So, I am speaking about transformation and personal transformation. So we just saw the history of the transformation of Newburyport, and thank you for that slideshow. That was just amazing, truly amazing. As I stand here, I wonder who stood here before, but I'm sure you can tell us all the details. So personal transformation is about, it's a choice. We're all in a process of growth. We're all in a process of evolution. And we have a choice of how do we want to dance with that? Do we want to just be couch potatoes and let life take us on and just go through the journey? Or do we want to dance with that and make choices with it? So John Williams uses the word the new earth paradigm. So I think of it as there are two fields that you can choose from. This is a very simplistic view, but it's kind of a fun way to look at it. One view is like the old Newburyport that was all the rubble behind the buildings, and it's sort of, you can think of it as third dimensional, it's very linear, it's very rational. Some of this field, this paradigm can be very fear-based, so like a lot of the medical institution, the banking institution, things like that are over in this field. There's another field that you can choose to play in. This is the field of the restoration of Newburyport. This is the field that the people, the visionaries saw, what could we do with these buildings, and do we tear them down, do we restore them? So this is the field that Deepak Chopra calls the field of infinite creative possibilities. This is the field of visionaries. This is the field of hope, possibilities, of the field of dreams. And at any given moment, you have a choice of which field are you going to play in. This is love-driven, this is fear-driven, and it's just a way to look at the world, to look at life. It's almost like two parallel realities that are going on at the same time. So when I asked John Williams, well, what do you want me to talk about? He said, make it personal, tell your story. So in looking at personal transformation, you can look at this, your transformational growth could come through a multitude of different ways. It could come through a health issue, it could come through a learning epiphany that you have, it could come through almost anything. But for me, it came through some health issues that were minor things that were adding up into impacting my life and limiting my life. I had some back issues. I had something called Raynaud's disease in my hands, which means that when you're out in the cold, your hands go gray and go numb and it's really, really painful. So in the Western medical world, they would say, oh, there's no known cause, there's no known cure, so sorry, don't go out in the cold, and wear lots of gloves. Well, I lived in Boston, in this area, so even in 50 degrees, my hands would go numb. And the back stuff, they said, oh, this is degenerative disc disease, so sorry, you will have this for the rest of your life. Here are your pain meds, nothing we can do, and if you get depressed, here's some meds for that. So I looked at that, and that was all over in this field of you have to live with this, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life, there's nothing we can do about it. I decided to leap into there's got to be another way to do this. And so all of that took me into the world of holistic health. So I'm standing here today because I was a little rebel, and when the doctors all said, this is your life, I said, I'm going to go burn some tea. Thank you. I don't believe this. So it took me on my path of transformational growth. And it took me into all sorts of different places. And one of the places that I went was a holistic healer, Mark Mancola. At that point, we moved to the South Shore. And so I worked with Mark in nutrition. Funny that I then went on to become a nutritional counselor, and that was the start of my holistic practice. But so my transformational growth started there, and I worked with Mark for 3 years radically, like talk about an extreme makeover of looking at my health, my lifestyle, adding in all sorts of different components that hadn't been there. And after 3 years, Mark said to me, if you really want to be healed, you need to look at the spiritual side of your life. So that's just tying in everything that John Williams had just said about the spiritual component. At that point, I moved to California, like a couple days after Mark said that to me, and started on my personal career growth of going into holistic healing and getting certified in a multitude of different modalities: nutritional counseling, guided imagery, aromatherapy, massage and body work, and energetic healing. So I put that all together and call it transformational healing. So you have a choice, always. This is about empowerment. It's about taking responsibility for yourself. And then through all of that, I then became a holistic health practitioner. And then about 3.5 years ago, we started getting the call to come back to New England after 10 years in California. So this ties in with the Newburyport area because I was really pulled to come back to Newburyport. When we lived in Boxford, my family and I on North Shore, we used to go to Plum Island a lot, and we would always drive by the high school, and we'd always comment on this Newburyport High School is it's got to be the most beautiful high school on the planet. You taught there, right?
Middle school, but I did do some school, high school, and it was designed by the same fellow that did Colonial Williamsburg for a while.
Oh, okay.
That was Ted Curios. And Amy Batchelor, who's no longer in Newburyport here. So again, this was part of that exhibit that we had presented here 10 years ago, and I'm going to just read from a paragraph from that exhibit, one paragraph, and then after I do, you might see a little more, understand where I'm going with this a little bit and what it has to do with the revival. Newburyport, an American Perspective, is a contemporary concourse designed to serve as a model for establishing a new modern-day paradigm in personal and community development. It is an expression of the current state of the American dream, a dream that this artist feels was once the pride and aspiration of all Americans and the envy of the rest of the world. It is a social call for a community movement to once again answer the call as wayfarers and lead a restoration of the American dream through personal and community empowerment at a time in which world events threaten to destroy the very fiber of the American way of life as we know it. Come join us in the celebratory event of the enduring American spirit that can spark a social consciousness that has the potential to reach across our nation once again like that of burning teas. And if that Market Square plaque that you see, if you don't know about it, I invite you to go down and take a look at it again and read it. And what it says is, "Pass, O restless passerby, hear ye the lively stir of trade, while echoes of freedom's fury rise above the reek of burning tea, mingling with the brisk breezes off the sea." And for anybody that doesn't know what that's about and why Governor Dukakis was actually burning tea to commemorate the transformation of Market Square, is that it was known, and this was one of the things that stuck with me by Ted Curios because it was part of his slide presentation. But he actually brought up some of the points that were actually been researched lately by a group out of one of the academies here, that tea was burnt in protest 2 weeks prior to the Boston Tea Party right here in Newburyport. So I wanted to throw this out a little bit because what I believe this original presentation that I called the Newburyport an American Perspective, and what I just read to you in that quote, personally,